Imagine a running back so powerful, so unstoppable, that entire defenses had to mentally prepare every time he touched the ball. Now, picture that player weighing 230 pounds, with 36-inch thighs. This was Earl Campbell. He didn't just run past defenders, he ran through them. A player who redefined what it meant to be a power back in the NFL, turning every game into a brutal test of physical strength and endurance. In the history of the NFL, many running backs have been celebrated for their agility or finesse, but few, if any, were feared for their raw power the way Earl Campbell was. Every time he took a handoff, it felt like a storm was brewing on the field. Defenders knew what was coming, but stopping it was a completely different challenge. Campbell wasn't just a threat to gain yards, he was a force that would leave opponents battered and bruised, and sometimes demoralized. In today's video, we'll explore the incredible story of Earl Campbell, the man who turned raw physicality into an art form on the football field. From his humble beginnings in Tyler, Texas, to his meteoric rise in both college and professional football, Campbell's journey is one of perseverance, power, and pure dominance. Over the next 30 minutes, you'll see how Campbell not only became one of the most feared players to ever step onto the gridiron, but also one of the greatest running backs the sport has ever known. By the end of this story, you'll understand why defenders dreaded lining up across from him, and why Earl Campbell's name will forever be etched in NFL history as the embodiment of strength, determination, and heart. Earl Campbell wasn't just another running back, he was a force of nature, a player who seemed more like a human battering ram than an athlete. Standing at 5 feet 11 inches and weighing 230 pounds, Campbell's size alone made him a threat on the field. But it was the way he used his build that truly set him apart. His most defining physical feature? His massive, 36-inch thighs. They were legendary, and for good reason. Those tree-trunk legs gave him a base of power that made tackling him feel like trying to stop a freight train. For defenders, facing Earl Campbell wasn't just a challenge, it was a nightmare. He wasn't the type of back you could bring down with a simple arm tackle. No, it usually took 2 or 3 defenders, sometimes more, to even slow him down. There are countless stories from defensive players who faced Campbell, each of them echoing the same sentiment: if you didn't hit him with everything you had, you were the one who'd end up on the ground. One of the most iconic moments that showcased Campbell's power came in 1978, during a game between the Houston Oilers and the Los Angeles Rams. In a single play that has since become the stuff of legend, Campbell took a handoff, barreled through the line, and found himself face-to-face with linebacker Isaiah Robertson. Without hesitation, Campbell lowered his shoulder and drove straight into Robertson. The result? Robertson was sent flying backward, while Campbell kept moving forward, completely unfazed. It was the kind of play that made defenders think twice before stepping in his path. But it wasn't just his brute strength that made Campbell special, it was his endurance. He could carry the ball 30, 40, even 50 times a game and still come back for more. In fact, many of his best performances came late in games when other players were exhausted. Campbell, however, seemed to thrive on the physical punishment. As the game wore on and defenders grew tired, Campbell only got stronger. It was as if he fed off the collisions, gaining energy from every tackle attempt. Opponents who tried to tackle him didn't just have to worry about his size, they had to contend with his relentless running style. Campbell never danced around defenders or tried to make them miss. He went straight at them, daring them to try and stop him. And more often than not, they couldn't. His running style was brutal, but it was also incredibly effective. He wasn't interested in juking past defenders, he was interested in running through them. Over the years, Campbell became known for his signature move, the stiff arm. With one powerful thrust of his arm, he could send a would-be tackler flying, leaving him sprawled out on the ground while Campbell charged ahead. The stiff arm became a symbol of Campbell's dominance, an unstoppable force that could neutralize even the best defenders in the league. To play against Earl Campbell meant preparing for 60 minutes of pure punishment. Defenses had to game plan around him, knowing that no matter how hard they hit him, Campbell would be back for more. Linebackers, safeties, and defensive linemen all felt the impact of his punishing style of play, and many were left battered and bruised after a game against the Oilers. And it wasn't just the physical toll that Campbell took on opponents. His presence on the field had a psychological impact, too. Defenders who had to face him knew they were in for a long, painful day. Just the thought of having to tackle Campbell over and over again was enough to break the spirits of even the toughest players. Campbell's power was so overwhelming that he earned the nickname the Tyler Rose, a nod to his hometown in Texas and the fact that, like a rose, he was both beautiful to watch and incredibly dangerous to touch. But for all the beauty in his game, it was the destruction he left in his wake that made him truly feared. It's no exaggeration to say that Earl Campbell changed the way defenses approached the running game. Teams had to adjust their entire strategy to account for his power. He wasn't just a threat to score, he was a threat to wear down entire defenses over the course of a game. Defensive coordinators would often stack the box with extra defenders, hoping to slow him down, but even that didn't always work. Campbell could take on 8 or 9 defenders in the box and still break off a 20-yard run, dragging defenders behind him like they were mere obstacles. In the end, it wasn't just Campbell's numbers that made him a legend, it was the way he played the game. He embodied the very essence of power football. Every time he touched the ball, fans and defenders alike held their breath, knowing that something extraordinary was about to happen. He wasn't just another great running back, he was a force that couldn't be stopped, a living testament to the idea that football, at its core, is a game of strength, determination, and pure will. Earl Campbell didn't just make a splash when he entered the NFL, he made history. From the moment he stepped onto the field, it was clear that Campbell wasn't just another talented rookie. He was something special, a player destined to change the game. And in his very first season with the Houston Oilers, he did just that. Campbell exploded onto the scene in 1978, rushing for 1,450 yards and 13 touchdowns, earning both Offensive Rookie of the Year and Offensive Player of the Year honors. But that was only the beginning of his incredible journey. Most players, no matter how talented, take time to adjust to the speed and physicality of the NFL. But Earl Campbell wasn't most players. In his first 3 seasons, he accomplished something no other player has ever done, winning the Offensive Player of the Year award in 3 consecutive years. From 1978 to 1980, Campbell dominated the league in a way that few players ever have. Defenses couldn't figure him out, and week after week, he tore through them with his signature blend of power and speed. It wasn't just his stats that set him apart, it was the way he played the game. Campbell wasn't interested in avoiding contact or slipping past defenders. He sought them out, charging headfirst into opposing players with a determination that left fans in awe and defenders in pain. He was the definition of a power back, and his style of play resonated with the blue-collar mentality of the Houston Oilers and their fans. In his second season, Campbell's dominance reached new heights. He led the league in rushing with 1,697 yards, adding 19 touchdowns to his resume. For his efforts, he was named the NFL's most valuable player in 1979, cementing his status as the best player in the game. But it wasn't just the numbers that made Campbell special, it was the fact that everyone knew what was coming, and yet no one could stop it. Defenses would stack the box, throw multiple defenders at him, and still, Campbell would power through, dragging players along for the ride. One of Campbell's most iconic games came in 1980, during a Monday Night Football matchup against the Miami Dolphins. In that game, Campbell rushed for an incredible 199 yards and 4 touchdowns, leading the Oilers to a thrilling 35-30 victory. It was a performance for the ages, showcasing everything that made Campbell great: his strength, his endurance, and his ability to take over a game when his team needed him most. By the time Campbell's 3rd season was over, he had solidified his place as the most feared player in the NFL. In just 3 seasons, he had rushed for over 5,000 yards and 45 touchdowns, leading the league in rushing yards each year. His physical dominance and relentless style of play had turned him into a living legend, and the city of Houston rallied around their star player as the face of the Oilers' famed Love Ya Blue era. But Campbell's success wasn't just about his individual accomplishments, it was about what he brought to his team. Under his leadership, the Houston Oilers made back-to-back appearances in the AFC Championship game in 1978 and 1979. While they fell short of reaching the Super Bowl, Campbell's performances in those playoff runs are still remembered as some of the most heroic in NFL history. He was the heart and soul of the Oilers' offense, and even in defeat, his toughness and grit earned him the respect of his peers and fans alike. What made Campbell truly remarkable was his ability to sustain such a high level of play despite the immense physical punishment he endured. Game after game, season after season, Campbell carried the ball more than any other player, and yet he never seemed to slow down. His body took a beating, but his spirit remained unbroken, and that's what made him a true warrior on the field. By the end of his career, Earl Campbell had rushed for over 9,400 yards and 74 touchdowns. He led the league in rushing 3 times, was named to 5 Pro Bowls, and was inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 1991. But beyond the numbers and the accolades, Campbell left a legacy of toughness, resilience, and unmatched physicality. He wasn't just a great player, he was an icon, a player whose very presence on the field changed the game. Before Earl Campbell became the most feared running back in NFL history, he was just a young boy from Tyler, Texas. Born on March 29, 1955, Earl was the 6th of 11 children. Growing up in a large family, life was never easy for Campbell, but it was about to get even tougher. When Earl was just 11 years old, tragedy struck. His father, Burt Campbell, passed away unexpectedly. Earl was still a child, but suddenly he was faced with a void that would shape his life forever. For Earl, losing his father wasn't just a personal tragedy, it was the loss of his biggest role model. Burt Campbell was the man Earl looked up to, and with him gone, life changed dramatically. With his father no longer there to guide him, young Earl struggled to find his place. But in the midst of that pain, he found something that would eventually become his salvation: football. At first, Earl didn't seem destined for greatness on the football field. He wasn't a natural running back. In fact, he started out playing other positions, including kicker and linebacker. But as he grew, so did his love for the game and his size. By the time he reached high school, Earl had developed the physicality and the determination that would make him a future star. His coaches noticed his potential early on, and when they moved him to running back, something clicked. Earl had found his calling. Football wasn't just a sport for Earl, it became his outlet, his way of coping with the loss of his father. Every time he stepped onto the field, he played with a chip on his shoulder, running harder, faster, and stronger than anyone else. It was as if each run was a way to honor his father's memory, to prove to the world that he could overcome anything. Life in Tyler, Texas wasn't always kind to Earl, but it was where he learned to fight. It was in those early years, growing up in a large, hard-working family, that Earl developed the toughness and resilience that would later define his football career. Whether it was competing with his brothers in the backyard or overcoming the grief of losing his father, Earl learned to channel his emotions into something productive, something powerful. His upbringing was humble, but the lessons he learned in Tyler shaped the player and the man he would become. Earl Campbell wasn't just playing for himself, he was playing for his family, for his community, and for the memory of his father. And as he grew older, it became clear that Earl wasn't just a good football player. He was special. He was destined for greatness. By the time Earl Campbell reached high school, his raw talent and physical dominance were already turning heads. At John Tyler High School in Tyler, Texas, Campbell's coaches saw something special in him. After being moved to the running back position, Earl didn't just play well, he took over games. In his senior year, he led John Tyler to a state championship in 1973, cementing his status as one of the most dominant high school players in Texas history. His combination of power and speed was unmatched, and opposing defenses struggled to even slow him down. Earl wasn't just a standout, he was a phenomenon. His performance on the field made him a local legend in Texas, but it wasn't just state recognition that he earned. Scouts and college coaches from across the country were suddenly watching his every move. With each game, Campbell's reputation grew, and by the time he graduated, he was one of the most highly sought-after recruits in the nation. Some believe that Campbell was so advanced physically that he could have skipped college and gone straight to the NFL. But while many colleges tried to lure him away, Earl made a decision that would define the next chapter of his career. He was staying close to home. When Campbell chose the University of Texas, it was more than just a decision about football. It was about family. Earl had always been close to his mother, and Campbell, who had raised her 11 children after the passing of Earl's father. Staying in Texas allowed him to remain connected to his roots, playing in front of the fans who had supported him since high school and remaining close to the family that meant everything to him. For Earl, the decision to stay in Texas wasn't just about advancing his football career, it was about honoring his upbringing and the values instilled in him by his mother. When Earl arrived in Austin, expectations were sky high. Longhorns fans knew they had landed one of the biggest recruits in the country, and they couldn't wait to see him in action. Campbell didn't disappoint. Even as a freshman, it was clear that he was a cut above the rest. His powerful running style, a mixture of brute force and surprising agility, left defenders helpless. His first games for the Longhorns were a preview of the dominance to come. Under the legendary coach Darrell Royal, Campbell flourished. Royal knew he had something special in Campbell and built the Texas offense around him. Game after game, Campbell carried the ball with an intensity that was impossible to ignore. He wasn't just playing for touchdowns, he was playing with a purpose. Defenders who had once been the stars of their high school teams found themselves flattened by Campbell's relentless running. He didn't just evade tackles, he powered through them, often dragging multiple defenders as he fought for extra yards. What set Campbell apart wasn't just his physicality, it was his drive. Every time he took the field, he carried the weight of his community and his family with him. In interviews, Campbell often spoke about how his mother's strength had inspired him to work harder, and that motivation was visible in every run he made. Each yard gained was a tribute to the hard work and sacrifice that had defined his upbringing. As his college career progressed, Campbell's reputation continued to grow. He wasn't just one of the best players on the team, he was becoming one of the most feared players in the country. Opposing defenses knew what was coming, but there was little they could do to stop it. Every time Earl lined up in the backfield, fans and players alike held their breath, knowing that something special was about to happen. By the time Campbell left the University of Texas, he had solidified his place as a Longhorns legend. His time in Austin wasn't just about personal success, it was about proving that he could carry a team, that he could be the cornerstone of an offense. He had achieved national stardom, but he remained humble, always grounded by the values he had learned growing up in Tyler. His transition from high school to college was seamless, and it was clear to everyone watching that Earl Campbell was destined for greatness. His dominance at Texas was a prelude to the NFL, where he would continue to write his name in the history books. But for Campbell, his time as a Longhorn laid the foundation for everything that was to come. It was at Texas that Earl Campbell became more than just a great player, he became a symbol of strength, resilience, and unshakable determination. Earl Campbell's time at the University of Texas wasn't just good, it was legendary. From the moment he stepped on the field for the Longhorns, Campbell made it clear that he was no ordinary player. He had arrived in Austin as one of the most highly anticipated recruits in the country, and it didn't take long for him to live up to the hype. By the end of his college career, he wasn't just a great player, he was one of the most dominant forces college football had ever seen. Under head coach Darrell Royal, Campbell became the centerpiece of the Texas offense. From his very first season, it was evident that he was going to be special. His running style was unlike anything most college defenders had ever faced. He was powerful, but also deceptively fast for his size. When he ran the ball, he didn't just try to avoid tackles, he ran through defenders, leaving them flat on the ground while he powered ahead for extra yards. In 1977, everything came together for Campbell. It was his senior year, and by this point, he had already established himself as one of the best running backs in the country. But that year, he didn't just dominate, he took over the game entirely. Campbell led the nation in rushing yards and touchdowns, finishing the season with 1,744 rushing yards and 19 touchdowns. His performance on the field was nothing short of remarkable, and week after week, he put up numbers that left fans and analysts in awe. One of the things that made Campbell's senior season so special was the way he played. Every run was a statement. When he took the ball, defenders braced themselves for impact. Campbell wasn't just fast and strong, he ran with a purpose, as if every yard gained was personal. For defenders, tackling Earl Campbell was a painful reminder of how difficult it was to stop a player of his caliber. He was a freight train on the field, and defenders were the unfortunate souls standing on the tracks. Campbell's dominance that year was recognized with the ultimate prize in college football, the Heisman Trophy. On December 8, 1977, Earl Campbell became the first player from the University of Texas to win the prestigious award, and it was a well-deserved honor. His Heisman Trophy wasn't just a testament to his individual success, it was a symbol of how completely he had taken over the game. Campbell didn't just win the award, he dominated the vote, earning over 1,500 points and receiving more than double the number of first-place votes than the runner-up. His Heisman moment was iconic, but it wasn't the only award Campbell took home that season. He also won the Davy O'Brien Memorial Trophy as the outstanding player in the Southwest Conference and was named the Sporting News Player of the Year. Everywhere he went, people recognized that they were witnessing something truly special. Campbell wasn't just a star, he was a phenomenon, and his senior year would go down as one of the most dominant seasons in college football history. But what made Campbell's success even more impressive was how he carried himself off the field. Despite all the accolades, he remained humble, grounded in the values he had learned growing up in Tyler, Texas. He wasn't just playing for himself, he was playing for his family, his community, and for the memory of his father. Every time he touched the ball, it was with a purpose. His humility and work ethic earned him the respect of his teammates, coaches, and opponents alike. Campbell wasn't just great because of his physical abilities, he was great because of who he was as a person. Of course, Campbell's senior season wasn't without its challenges. Every team that faced Texas knew that stopping Earl Campbell was their only chance of winning. Defenses stacked the box, putting extra men on the line of scrimmage, hoping to slow him down. But no matter how hard they tried, it was never enough. Campbell consistently broke through, overpowering defenders with ease and showing why he was the most feared player in college football. One game that particularly stood out during Campbell's senior year was Texas' clash with Texas A&M. In that game, Campbell rushed for 222 yards and 4 touchdowns, leading the Longhorns to a 57-28 victory. It was one of the defining performances of his college career, showcasing his ability to take over a game and dominate even the toughest defenses. By the time the game was over, it was clear to everyone that Earl Campbell was on a different level. At the end of the 1977 season, Campbell left an indelible mark on college football. He had rushed for over 4,400 yards during his time at Texas, setting a school record that would stand for years. He was a consensus All-American, a Heisman Trophy winner, and one of the most celebrated players in the history of the game. His senior season had been nothing short of historic, and as he prepared to take the next step to the NFL, there was little doubt that Earl Campbell was destined for greatness. But more than the awards and the records, what truly defined Earl Campbell's college career was his sheer will to succeed. He played with a drive that few could match, pushing himself to be the best on every play, every down, and every game. His time at Texas wasn't just about personal glory, it was about leaving a legacy. And by the time he left Austin, that legacy was firmly cemented. The time at the University of Texas wasn't just good, it was legendary. From the moment he stepped on the field for the Longhorns, it was clear that this wasn't just another talented player. Having arrived in Austin as one of the most highly anticipated recruits in the country, it didn't take long for him to live up to the hype. By the end of his college career, he wasn't just a great player, he was one of the most dominant forces college football had ever seen. Under head coach Darrell Royal, the Texas offense was built around Campbell's unique talents. From his very first season, it became evident that he was going to be special. His running style was unlike anything most college defenders had ever faced. Powerful yet deceptively fast for his size, he didn't just try to avoid tackles, he ran through defenders, often leaving them on the ground as he powered ahead for extra yards. In 1977, everything came together. It was the senior year, and by this point, he had already established himself as one of the best running backs in the country. But that year, he didn't just dominate, he took control of the game. Leading the nation in rushing yards and touchdowns, he finished the season with an astonishing 1,744 rushing yards and 19 touchdowns. His performance on the field was nothing short of remarkable, and each week, his numbers left fans and analysts in awe. What made that senior season so memorable was the way he played. Every run was a statement. When he took the ball, defenders braced themselves for the inevitable impact. It wasn't just his speed and strength, it was the intensity and purpose behind every play. For those trying to tackle him, it wasn't just a challenge, it was a painful reminder of just how difficult it was to bring him down. The dominance that year culminated in the ultimate prize in college football, the Heisman Trophy. On December 8, 1977, Campbell became the first player from the University of Texas to win the prestigious award, and it was a well-deserved honor. His Heisman win wasn't just about his individual success, it was a symbol of how completely he had taken over the game. The vote wasn't even close. He earned over 1,500 points and more than double the number of first-place votes compared to the runner-up. While the Heisman was the crowning achievement of that year, it wasn't the only accolade. He also won the Davy O'Brien Memorial Trophy as the outstanding player in the Southwest Conference and was named the Sporting News Player of the Year. Recognition poured in from every corner of the football world. Fans, coaches, and players alike knew they were witnessing something truly special. Campbell wasn't just a standout player, he was a phenomenon, and his senior season was one of the most dominant in college football history. What made his success even more remarkable was the way he handled it all. Despite the accolades, he remained grounded and humble. Growing up in Tyler, Texas, he had been taught the importance of hard work, and those values were evident in everything he did. Football wasn't just about personal achievements, it was about something greater. Each time he ran the ball, it was with a purpose, playing for his family, his community, and the memory of his father. Despite his success, the path wasn't without challenges. Defenses knew that stopping Campbell was the key to beating Texas, and they geared up every week to slow him down. Extra defenders stacked the line of scrimmage, hoping to stop him in his tracks. But no matter what strategy they used, it rarely worked. Time and again, he broke through the defenses, showing why he was the most feared player in college football. One game in particular stood out during that magical senior year. When Texas faced Texas A&M, Campbell put on a performance for the ages. Rushing for 222 yards and 4 touchdowns, he single-handedly led the Longhorns to a 57-28 victory. That game was a perfect example of everything he brought to the field: power, speed, and a relentless drive to win. By the time the final whistle blew, there was no question that Campbell was playing at a level that few had ever reached. As the 1977 season came to a close, it was clear that Campbell had left an indelible mark on college football. With over 4,400 rushing yards to his name, he set records that would stand for years. More than the stats, however, it was the impact he had on the game that defined his legacy. His impact on the field was undeniable, but his leadership in the locker room was equally important. Campbell wasn't a vocal leader, he led by example. His work ethic, his resilience, and his determination to win inspired his teammates to give everything they had. The Oilers' Love You Blue era was defined by Campbell's presence, and the team fed off his energy every time he stepped onto the field. Even as defenses focused solely on stopping him, Campbell still found ways to dominate. His vision, balance, and instinctive feel for the game allowed him to find holes in the defense, and once he saw daylight, he was gone. His famous stiff arm became a weapon that defenders dreaded, often sending would-be tacklers sprawling to the turf. It was this combination of power, speed, and finesse that made Campbell so special. He wasn't just a bruiser, he was a complete running back, capable of breaking long runs as easily as he could break tackles. By the time the 1980 season came to a close, Campbell had firmly established himself as the greatest running back in the NFL. His 3 consecutive rushing titles from 1978 to 1980 were a testament to his consistent dominance, and his impact on the game was undeniable. While many players might have been content with the accolades, Campbell was driven by something more: the desire to win a championship for Houston. As the 1980s progressed, Campbell's body began to show the wear and tear of his punishing running style, but his legacy as one of the most dominant players in NFL history was already secured. His back-to-back seasons of rushing supremacy were a feat that few could match, and his ability to carry the Oilers deep into the playoffs year after year left an indelible mark on the franchise. By the early 1980s, Campbell's punishing running style, which had made him a legend, began to take its toll. Season after season, he carried the Houston Oilers offense, taking on relentless hits from defenders who tried, and often failed, to slow him down. But the physical punishment began to show. By 1981, Campbell's body was starting to give in. His legs, which once powered him through defenders with ease, were now struggling to keep up with the demands of the game. Despite the mounting injuries, Campbell's toughness never wavered. He continued to fight through the pain, determined to help his team. In 1984, the Oilers traded him to the New Orleans Saints, where he was reunited with coach Bum Phillips. But by then, the explosive speed and unstoppable power that had defined his career were starting to fade. After 2 seasons with the Saints, Campbell realized it was time to hang up his cleats and retired from the game he loved. Even with a career that spanned only 8 seasons, Campbell's impact on the NFL was undeniable. He retired with over 9,400 rushing yards and 74 touchdowns, solidifying his place as one of the greatest running backs to ever play the game. More than the numbers, it was his relentless style of play that earned him a place in football history. He wasn't just a running back, he was a force of nature, and every time he touched the ball, defenders knew they were in for a battle. In 1991, Campbell was inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame, a fitting tribute to his remarkable career. His highlights, from breaking multiple tackles to powering through entire defenses, remain some of the most iconic moments in NFL history. Yet, perhaps his greatest legacy lies off the field. Throughout his career, Campbell remained humble and grounded, always giving credit to his teammates and coaches. His story is one of resilience, humility, and a deep love for football, a legacy that will continue to inspire generations to come. Earl Campbell wasn't just a football player, he was a force who reshaped what it meant to be a power running back in the NFL. His journey from a small-town kid in Texas to one of the most feared players in league history is a testament to his determination, strength, and heart. Every time he touched the ball, he brought an intensity and physicality that few players could match. His bruising runs, his ability to carry entire defenses on his back, and his relentless will to win made him an icon of the game. Despite the challenges that came with his punishing style of play, Campbell's legacy isn't defined by the injuries or the pain he endured. It's defined by the way he played with everything he had, every time he stepped onto the field. Whether it was in high school, college, or the NFL, he left everything out there, giving his fans moments they would never forget. His story is one of triumph over adversity, of pushing through pain to achieve greatness. Even today, Campbell's highlights continue to inspire generations of players and fans alike. The way he ran, powerful, determined, and fearless, remains one of the most iconic styles of play in football history. And his humility off the field only deepened the respect he earned throughout his career. Campbell may have hung up his cleats, but his impact on the game will last forever, reminding us all of what it means to truly love the sport. So, what do you think? Could any running back today match the physical dominance and sheer will that Earl Campbell brought to the game? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories about NFL legends who changed the game forever. Stay tuned, because this journey through football history is just getting started.